It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. If you're not watching the show on YouTube already, go subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and also follow us wherever you listen to the podcast as well. And check out the description of the show where you can find all the links to our sponsors, as well as the link to the GoFundMe for year 8 of Rocking Around the 412. It's our Christmas fundraiser that we put on for the past 7 years. Donated Christmas to 177 kids in the local Pittsburgh area through our GoFundMe and through the East Rochester Salvation Army Angel Tree, adopting kids off of that Angel Tree. So there's a couple ways to get involved. Angel Tree is going to be later on in the year, but as of right now, the GoFundMe is up in the description of the show. So if you want to check that out, share it, and get the word out, we appreciate it wholeheartedly. This week, we have a special guest. It was supposed to be last week, but I know husband duties come whenever they can. So I fully understand that. And we have Jesse Marshall. You know him from The Athletic, McKean's Hockey Talk, and Freelance Penguins Talk, and NHL Talk. We know him as the prodigal son of Ambridge County, or Ambridge BA in Beaver County. But Jesse, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I was going to wear my Around the 412 hat. And
I was going to say, you know, I wasn't gonna.
Like, I felt like it was like wearing a Killers t-shirt to the Killers concert. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? So
well, Tyler and I are.
Now, next time
I'll say, are we weird for wearing our own merch?
No, I don't think so. I'd do it if I had my.
Wait, actually, which one do you have? Do you have the?
I have the one that's block lettering, with a spray paint outline of the county.
So not either the ones that we're
none of the ones that you're.
It would have been hilarious if you did then, because it would have had all three represented on here. Jesse, last week when we did our Penguins episode, we obviously felt like we had to give a brief synopsis, if you will, of the way that the Penguins draft went down, early free agency. But we very admittedly were like, hey, we do not know anything about these guys that the Penguins are drafting right now. We're going to have Jesse on in the near future, and we'll talk about it. Luckily, it was only 1 week later that we had to wait to make that happen. So we're going to dive into this, get your thoughts on the haul that the Penguins got from the draft class. For a long time, the conversation surrounding the Penguins prospect pool has been it's bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I think that we've taken a step in the right direction, maybe more towards middle of the pack now and just continue to climb. But let's start off right at the jump with the 11th overall selection of Ben Kindle. What do you feel like we got in Ben? What type of player is he? How quickly do we think that we could see an arrival here? What's the expectation?
Yeah. So I had Ben Kindle 20th. I don't think it's a huge stretch to move down to 11 to get him. I know that the Penguins had him in the top 10 of their list. So from their perspective, I don't think he would have made it past the Islanders, who had those back-to-back selections coming right after the Penguins. I think Pittsburgh had a good beat on that, and they went and got their guy, traded 12 to accrue a little bit more on the backside, perhaps to make up for the fact that I don't know. I think they had Kindle as a top 10 player, but I think they were carpet bombing here, right? I think that was the strategy, was to carpet bomb and try to just buy as many lottery tickets as they could get, right? Which is, to me, the correct strategy. So specific to Ben Kindle, if you were ranking fun experiences I had watching players this year, who was the most fun? Ben Kindle's 5 or 4 easy. It's a fun combination that it's also very rare to me that almost all of the offensive highlights I capped, and there were tons because he's really good with the puck, magician with the puck, lethal shot. But almost all of those highlights, if you went on the Calgary Hitman website and just watched them, you would think that he was just aloof, elusive, floaty / wing / center. But you watch the tape 10 seconds before all those goals, and he's making an unreal defensive play that starts the entire sequence. And I would equate it for people that maybe don't watch hockey a ton. Think about the way a safety plays. They're downfield, right? And then they try to break on a ball, right? They're running downfield on a ball. Ben Kindle does the same thing as a center. He'll sit his way back, right? He hangs and then comes downhill on the puck. And it's a timing thing. He's not a physical guy, right? I would argue one of the reasons I don't think he's a winger is he's not good enough on the boards yet. which is
you answered my question. I was going to ask if you think he'll stick at center, what that transition is going to be.
If you move him off a center too, Smitty, you take away the freedom he has to be good defensively, right? That middle lane is a lot more forgiving than a board lane for a wing, right? Your assignment's pretty strict. Whereas your center, you can make read-based plays all day. That's your job, right? And he's good at that. He's a high IQ player, very high. When people use that term ambiguously all the time, but for me, you can identify it in Kindle in the way he sits back and breaks on a play, whether that's reading the direction a loose puck's going to go or jumping on a pass so that when the recipient is at the action point of accepting that puck, there's Ben Kindle's stick, right? And maybe he's lifting the stick and stealing. Maybe he's just whacking it, right? And making a sweeping check with his stick. It's one of those things that he's got a variety of tools in his arsenal to make a defensive play. Almost none of them include being physical, right? Like, which is there, but again, he's small. That's not his game right now. I don't think he's going to stay this size forever. He'll get bigger, right? But the thing I have to drive home to people the most is that, like, he's such a good player defensively that almost every offensive highlight you see of him is born off of something he did to get that puck, right? And it's got to be a super frustrating player, I would imagine, to play against from the perspective of being another center. Like, that's a nightmare matchup, is you can't find open room against him. He's never going to leave you alone. He's doing annoying stuff with his stick to constantly dispossess you. And he's got a really good work ethic and is kind of a try hard, right? Like, I hated when those guys showed up to beer league games. That was horrible. 11 p.m. That was the last thing I wanted to deal with. So there's that, right? Now, his skating, you hear a lot of criticism of, which I think is kind of weird. I don't have a criticism of his skating, guys. But you know what it lacks? Pop, NHL pop, like that end speed, that top end gear, and that jump point off the first foot, right? He doesn't skate hunched over. His shoulders are square to his legs. Like, his hips are good. He cuts and edges well. It's mostly just that pop. And I think that'll come with more strength. I think the first thing the Penguins told him when he walked in the door this week was, here's your new meal plan and your new workout plan. Get to work, buddy. Here we go. Yeah. Like, that's the benefit of being in a pro program for him right now. But that being said, it doesn't exist yet. I think it will come. And then there's that physical piece, right? Which, again, to me is just inherently tied to the fact that he's not the biggest guy in the world right now. They made this pick because the things that he understands, I think, about being a center, playing the game at a high level, how to dispossess players, how to anticipate, right? Just be a conduit. He makes a lot of really good one-touch plays that just keep things moving forward. They're not highlight reel plays. They're not stuff that you're going to see in the montages a lot of people put together, but they're there in mass. Like, he does it a lot. And then when you get to down to the fact that, like, his shot is violent, like it's deceptively violent. Like, he's great at hiding it. So he does a lot of tucking before he shoots. He'll pull back, right? And then hide that release from the goalie. But the angles that he can get from a flat blade, normal wrist scenario they're just extreme. So when he's in tight, like, things are coming off his blade straight up, right? It's almost like you doesn't even make sense when you watch it, right? Like, how did he do that? So, I think nobody got a better look at him than the Penguins did. When Tanner Howe got to Calgary in the middle of the year, a quarter mark of the year, immediate line mate for Ben Kindle. So it was Ben Kindle and Oliver Tulk, who was just at development camp this week as well, alternating as center. More often than not, Tulk being used in offensive zone draws because they would put Kindle as a trigger man, as a set face-off. So pretty much anytime Kindle was in the offensive zone, he wasn't taking the face-off. It wasn't because he wasn't good. He was 54% last year. It was because they were using him as a trigger guy off puck. They're trying to win it right over to him so he could let it go, right? But immediate chemistry with Tanner Howe. Nice compliment to Howe's sandpaper type game. They also worked off each other extremely well. You go back, I'm putting together a video montage. It's just Ben Kindle and Tanner Howe in 2-on-1s. It's a fun watch. It's a lot of fun. So he'll go back there, and now that he's signed, like, college is out for him. Like, can't do that route, right? So he's going back to Calgary, where he'll be top dog. That's going to be his team next year. He'll be in complete control. It might even be the captain. I wouldn't be shocked by that. I think that he'll probably round out another 2 years there before he makes a jump. And I think he needs it, again, just to get bigger, just to dominate that space and just, be the man, which he will. So all in all, like, pleased with the pick. I think value wise, you can get into, if we want to get into meta discussions about value, we can. I think most people have 17 to 20, right? That's a comfortable 22. 17 to 22 is a comfortable range for him. I don't think 11's big enough for me to pull my hair out, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's the question I always get is, well, what's the ROI? I think bare minimum 2.5, 3 years. And it's, again, there's a physical maturation that has to happen.
This is kind of the same question, but really not, because I'm taking a massive leap here to say what needs to happen. And honestly, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think on this because I got to play an ad. But what needs to happen for Ben Kindle to be like the guy in this next wave for the Penguins, the next group that's going to compete, really for him to be, quote unquote, a game changer? What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Maybe Ben Kindle will have a Game Changer shirt down the road there if things pan out well. But yeah, what needs to happen for him to reach that level? Do you think that's something that's attainable?
Yeah, I think it's just physical maturity, right? Like, I think if you bet on him now, like making the team out of camp, you're betting on him being able to be like a Braden Point style guy right out of the gate. And I think just given the struggle he had on the wall last year as a wing, I don't see him being able to handle the rigors of the NHL today, right? So I think, like, and even next year, I would call that into question. I mean, he could go back, and if he grows an inch and a half and gains 25 pounds of muscle, clip this and play it so I look like an idiot. But that's you get where I'm going. Like that, the odds of that happening are not great, right? Yeah. And I don't expect that to be the case. So I think if nothing else, he finishes out his CHL time. And I think now the Penguins are kind of on him and have their team working with him, right? Specifically to get bigger, stronger, and on a more professional, quote unquote, regimen. So it'll come, right? Not worried about any of this. It's just the natural wait for a player of this sort of type, for lack of a better word, to develop.
I also was going to say, do you think his size, because I saw a lot of Penguin fans reacting to the pick, and immediately a lot of them were talking about how small he is. And I feel like a lot of people were talking as if he's like Cole Caulfield size, which just isn't the case. But do you think his size is probably the largest factor as far as like him making a jump to the NHL? Like, is the rest, do you think, going to come naturally, and the size is the biggest issue for the Penguins getting him to that level?
Yeah, and to be even more nuanced, right? I don't even think it's necessarily size as much as it is physical maturity, right? Like, I think, like, when I talk about that lack of pop in his skating, that's a muscle thing, right? Like, I think as he just naturally grows and gets bigger and spends more time in the weight room, like, his skating is going to improve because it's already good, right? It just lacks that top end gear and first step, right? That's the other thing, is like that first step off the puck in transition. It could be better. And I think if it gets better, it makes him even more lethal, right? Because he's already good at cutting, like in the zone. We haven't talked enough about this, but like his puck manipulation is obscene. Like some of the dangles that he can pull off. It's like that old puck's magnetized to his stick style thing, right? So like if you add the extra layer into that skating and you give him that extra step off, it's going to make it even harder for defensemen to deal with him. So it's not so much his size as it is, I think, just strength. Right. That's probably the better word for it, is I think he's just not physically as mature yet. And I think as that comes, it'll make him better, because it's not that he's not a willing participant in the more physical stuff that has to happen. Like, it's there. It just, he lacks the tools to do it effectively.
All right, we can move on and talk about the next pick, because if we spend this much time on every single one of them, we'll be here till probably 3 a.m. But I do want to give a quick shout out, Jesse. I thought the draft show in general that you were hosting in Spaces there on Twitter was fantastic. Kind of picked up the ball that was dropped by the ESPN coverage and format of the draft itself. So it was a lot of fun. I hope that you continue to do so going forward in the future. I don't have the greatest attention span, so I was popping in and out a little bit, doing some walking around. But anyway, just remember
a charger next time.
Yeah, that was hard. Yeah. I wasn't paying attention to my battery life at the end, and we had a hard crash out there to seal out the show.
I heard the audio stop, and I'm like, did something happen to my phone, or did something happen to Twitter? I'm like, no.
I thought maybe he just saw that I had left, and he was
that
like, you know what,
he's not here. Shut it down.
He's not here. I'm out. But anyways, hope that you continue to do stuff like that going forward in the future. Really enjoyed it. 22nd overall. You mentioned they slid down here in the first trading with the Flyers, which I thought was kind of odd to begin with. But 22nd overall, Bill Zan was a name that you had mentioned prior to that selection taking place. This one I've seen, again, as somebody that would not pretend to know much about these guys, I've seen a little bit more variance in terms of the opinions of this selection. What did you make of it?
I'm a mark for Bill Zan unabashedly. I became aware of his game back in November because he was a guy that was kind of hovering around the early portion of the second round, I think, in the initial draft rankings that were out for him. But then he went on a 23-game point streak and scored in every game in the month of November, which is significant. And then also he signed on to work with a skills coach who's a great friend of mine. And they were kind enough to make me privy to some of their meeting notes, which gave me, I think, a little bit more insight than the average bird in terms of what they were working on and what was important to them. So when they kind of moved down, I knew they were going to be right in the Zan and wheelhouse. But people scoff at me when I say this, and that's fine. And I think it's funny because he's such a kind human, a quiet kid, right? Quiet French Canadian kid who just, you watch him play and he's not into like the extracurricular stuff. Like he'll defend himself and his teammates, but you don't really see him out there like chirping. He speaks with his play, and his play to me, and again, come at me if you want for this, but it's Patrick Hornquist-esque. In front of the net, he's a nightmare, and it's not. Yeah. There's a difference. There's varying levels to efficacy when you have a player screening, right? And a player that is aware of the goalie is the ultimate screener, who's looking back and making sure that what he is doing angularly is providing max level of frustration to the netminder. Like you think about Patrick Hornquist, like those Nashville netminders wanted to kill him in that cup final, right? Like he was just constantly in their space and in such a way that they were totally ineffectual when he was on the ice. That's Bill Zan, right? Tall, lanky kid, hard to move. When he forechecks, he does it like a bat out of hell. There's no better way to describe it. And it's funny to watch on television or on the internet because you can watch this white streak, this jersey coming through the neutral zone at a blur, and oh, there he is. Like he's just going to punish someone, right? And they're just good, hard physical body checks that terrify defensemen. So again, like I mentioned this about Kindle, but a lot of what Bill Zan feasts off of offensively is his own forechecking. And he constantly puts defensemen in uncomfortable positions. And there are times where you watch these games, and this was happening in the playoffs. There's this Bill Zan attrition effect is what I call it, where after a period of time, he's going against the other team's best, their top line D, top pair D every night. They get into the third period and they see him coming and they're just like, nah, I'm not going in there for that. Like I'm not gonna, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm done. Like I'm checked out, go get the puck. Right. Or when they do get the puck, they're closing their eyes and just wherever this thing goes is fine with me. So he feasts on that, right? That is his thing. And when they needed it, like I've said this in my article for The Athletic, when Steve Hartley needed something to happen up there, Zan over the boards 100% of the time, every time. I need an energy shift. I need to wake the team up. They just scored. Like we can't get out of our own end, right? We've iced the puck 3 times in a row, and now that the play's completely flipped on its head, we can't get out of our zone. Where's Bill Zan? Like that was the solution. He was the skeleton key for that team. Every single situation that you could put him in, power play, penalty kill, even strength. He was a momentum changing player who had to, like you almost like had a fully charged battery symbol over his head every single shift. So, I can't watch him and not think of Patrick Hornquist. I think the only thing he lacks is a little bit of Hornquist's troll-like behavior, right? Where like the sneers and the smiles and like the chirping, like that. There's none of that, but the gameplay is the same. And I'll mention this. He is an elite level shot. Both in I think volume could be adjusted a little bit. I think he gets a little bit too crazy sometimes with it. and is firing from probably poor percentage areas. But there are times where I saw a goalie square to Bill Zan and glove up, and he just put it right past him. Like, they don't even move. Like, there's nothing you could do about it. It's the release is so fast, and he gets so much velocity. When you give him the time and space, it's a nightmare to deal with. So people tell me all the time, "Well, yeah, Bill Zan, they draft a third liner." I think that's crazy. I think that's nuts to shoehorn him into that. I think his ceiling is super, his basement is super high. Like, to me, he's an NHL player just based on energy alone. His worst case scenario, he's on your fourth line killing penalties, right? Best case scenario, he's on your second line and is a utility player that you could put out in a number of situations that I think of again in like the Kunitz Hornquist style role, right? So I think that's the basement. That's the ceiling. It's a safe pick to me. People beat up his skating. It's just not good looking. That's really it. But it is not hampering him at all. It's just classically horrific. But like, I can also tell you that like, that's been a primary focus of his skills work, right? Is like specific boot level work, right? That gets him off pucks quicker. And I think that I'm not worried about Bill Zan and skating. Again, I think it'll always be a little bit bizarre to watch, but it's his way of doing it and it works. Cutting angles, all that stuff, pivoting, all good. I think it's just, there's a lot of extra motion in there, right? Like, and I think it's when he picks his leg up, right? He could be more economical with that. It's almost his legs are flailing around when he pulls them up to go back down again. There's just too much motion, and it makes it look like he's like a Wile E. Coyote, where his legs are spinning. You know what I mean? But again, great defensively. Name something he's good at it. Scoring rates all point to positive outcomes in the future. It's just a fun player to watch, and I think people are really in Pittsburgh going to fall in love with him.
Not that he will end up playing like this, but your description, Hornquist, Kunitz, sounds like Sid would love to have him on his wing.
And it's the great part about it is that he's got the brains to do stuff like that. You know, I mean, he can think the game at a high level offensively. And for me, it's not just about the fact that he creates so many turnovers. It's what he can do in the immediacy of generating them after the fact, where it's like he's generating a turnover and then chaining skills together. Or working off puck in the right way. You know, his spacing is just phenomenal. He knows where to put himself to be open and have passes go in his wheelhouse that makes life easier for his teammates, right? And again, underrated playmaking ability. It's not his bread and butter. It's not what he's built his game on. But when you talk about playing with good centers, he can do that, and he can fit right into those molds.
Yeah, next first round pick came as, I feel like, more of a surprise for a lot of people. I know that I forget who was the name on your draft show that you were throwing out before the selection was made. Smitty and I were trying to think of it last week, but there was somebody that you thought the Penguins it would be smart for them to draft.
I don't remember now.
I don't remember either.
Can't remember. Yeah, nobody's jumping off to me, but
yeah,
I was throwing names all over the place there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just say I feel like this was out of their 3 first round picks, maybe the most polarizing as far as where he was drafted, if he should have been the selection there for the Penguins. But I want to get your thoughts on Horov, and just also the fact that the Penguins had 3 first round picks, and that's more first round picks than they had between 2015 to 2021. So
was it not Lyndon Lakovic?
It was Lyndon Lakovic who ended up going to the Capitals. Yes. Thank you. That's
okay.
A good call out. Yeah. This one's rough. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This one's a little bit rough. The tape's brutal. I got to be honest with you. Like, there are pockets of it that you're like, "Oh, that's good," but it's a rough watch right now. And I think like let's go and provide some context. Will Horov was with the United States development program. After Dan Muse left, something went sour there. I don't know what it was. They did pretty good internationally, but at home they were struggling against USHL teams. They were getting beat up by college squads. They looked discombobulated. They had no discernible identity at all, right? Horov did not thrive in that situation. I don't think they understood how to use him. Again, like, this is an identityless team that is not playing great hockey. and I don't think he slotted into it well, and he left and made the decision to go to Michigan in the middle of the year. Upon joining Michigan, he's the youngest player in NCAA D1 hockey. So context matters, right? Like that is important. He's also 6'5", 200 plus pounds at 17 years old. And if these things come together for him, all the stuff I'm going to talk about comes together for him, Lord have mercy. Like, what a prospect you get out of that. But this to me is, I've got 2 good first rounders. I got a third. Let's take a swing. Let's take a swing and hope this works out. Will Horkov's a big wing. Doesn't skate poorly. I think that there is a little bit of a hunched over element to his skating where his shoulders are too low. And he's labored as a result, but it doesn't seem to kill him. I think he's learning how to play at this level. My biggest concern is his hands. He killed a lot of breakouts last year in just not being able to take passes that were right in his bread box. As a wing, he only carried the puck across the blue line in all situations 26 times in 18 games. Guys, that's alarmingly low. That is alarmingly low.
Sure. Like
real concern there, right? Part of that is I don't think he's great at knowing how to support his teammates in transition. He kind of just barrels right down the middle lane, even though he's a wing. He's sort of like sucked into that center drive all the time. Maybe he'll be maybe he can play a good center later. I don't know that yet. I haven't seen any of that. Kind of played that all of his goals were in the token net front spot. That's where he scored all his goals. All of them. We're just banging and beating around home and in front. And that's because he's a big guy and he's hard to move right now. There needs to be a large, this is a project, right? Like a real serious time investment. Like there's not enough on tape from Will Horov for me right now to feel like he's the closest out of these 3 to being pro. I think he's the furthest away. And that, even noting how small of a player Ben Kindle is. Like, again, if it comes together, guys, and it just clicks, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he made a move to D1 in the middle of the year. Completely unfamiliar situation. Didn't know anybody. Youngest player in D1 hockey. Got to take that stuff into consideration. This is a year, like full year at Michigan. We get to see clean slate, right? I just have to tell you what I watched. I'm not going to lie, right? Like it wasn't pretty tape. In the highlight reel I put together, I was scraping. Like I was scraping for clips because it's just, he's not involved in a lot right now. He's just not. And I think that it's not because he lacks the willingness. Like his debut game for Michigan was outdoor game against Ohio State where he was just an animal. Like they just let him loose. I don't think he understood the system. I think he just went out there and was killing people. He had a goal and an assist, looked like a nightmare. But then it seemed like once that calmed down and he like settled into a role and started like having to know what the system was, he struggled a little bit. So we'll find out. This is a big year. This is a huge year for him, right? But his scoring rates were down. You know, when you look at age plus scoring rate, that's the number 1 predictor of future success in the NHL for a forward. And last year's not a good one, right? Not a good one. We've got to be honest. So we'll see how it goes. Am I concerned? In some ways, yes. Like being honest, there are some things on the tape that concern me. But he's in an unbelievable program. His dad played over 1,000 NHL games. And again, there are physical tools that are evident on the tape. There are things he does from time to time. They're like, oh, damn. But they're just few and far between right now. And we'll see. We'll see with this one. I think next year's a huge year for him. And he could come out of the gate on fire and it wouldn't shock me. Like I don't want to beat him up too bad. I just think that of all the players I watched in this class so far, he looks like the biggest project to me.
Which is, I don't know if I would say my issue with doing so. I don't know if I love the process of the trade up to do so. I think is really what it is. If you're sitting in a spot, he falls to it and you like that player for the reasons that you're saying, you feel like the ceiling is there despite not having much of a floor right now, and you take that swing, so be it. But it makes it that much bigger of a swing when you're trading up to do so.
Yeah. For sure. Unless, I mean, and again, it might be a situation where they had a beat and somebody was going to take that guy before they could, and they felt that strongly about him that they wanted to jump on it. But, you know, I think there were times watching games in this project where I was like,
yeah,
oh.
Well, okay. At least if what you're saying is true, whether I like or hate it, I can appreciate the conviction to do so.
Yeah, agreed. And again, these players don't grow on trees. You don't find players that are 6'5", 200 plus, 17 years old that can do these things with the puck sometimes. And like people hyped him up big time out of development camp, but like to me, like that was like the microcosm of the small things that he does well that you hope you see more of at Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that like again, I don't have it's not like a Sam Poland situation where I feel like his skating is like already got him behind the 8 ball. No, don't think that. Like raw physical talent is there. It's the IQ, the soft skills that bother me. And like those are all fixable, right? Like him being like, go put an egg on the ice like it's Mighty Ducks. He'll figure it out, right? Like they'll get better at taking those passes. So I'm not like sweating and concerned. I just think my encouragement to people is to put on your patient hat. Be patient with this one. Don't jump to conclusions. This is the one to me that has potentially the highest ROI, but also the longest runway to get there.
Fair.
That's actually what I was about to ask. Is it sounds like he for sure has the lowest floor as of right now of the other two first round draft picks. But would you compare his ceiling? Would you say it's potentially higher than the other two?
Yeah, if he hits, guys, I'm telling you, like if it comes together and he hits, this is like a dream scenario for general managers. You get the size, the hands, and the skating. That's what everybody yearns for. All that stuff's in there. So if every best case scenario were to happen here, like, damn, you're getting a huge power forward, like a really tall, strong player that can do fun things with the puck and is a nightmare in front of the net. Like that's all great, right? But that's every good positive outcome going together at once. And I think, and it's similar to what I said about Zan, and it's one of those situations that like worst case scenario, you put him out there as like a 4th line guy who's going to beat and bang and, can play good D. That's the worst case scenario here. Yeah. So we'll see. I would just be patient. I think that return on investment for this one, it might be a little bit longer than some of the other ones.
We can kind of go. We don't have to go through everybody that they selected here because again, we'd be here till like 3 a.m. But Peyton Kettles, who was it just happens to be their next selection, is somebody I definitely wanted to bring up just because they moved around the board quite a bit. They actually made a trade with Buffalo, getting up into the spot. Connor Timmins going the other way. Did it surprise you that they got a 2nd round pick back in that deal? I mean, was getting Clifton off the books just 1 year? I understand, overpaid for what he brings, 3-point-something million, whatever it was, but it's just 1 year. Like, were they that desperate to get that off the books?
At the end of the I can't think of another reason why. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was for them. They had other moves that they wanted to make and they wanted to move that salary and you get a pick for a cap casualty.
Okay, well, in that case, they get Peyton Kettles, 39th overall, 6'6", 194,
17, another 17-year-old.
Obviously, there's some relationship there with Owen Pickering already. They were teammates and juniors. So what do you make of this player? What do you make of this prospect? It's obviously 17, so it could be hard to say like a timeline here. But what do you make of it?
So here's the thing about Peyton Kettles is like, I thought it was a fun watch when I went and looked at his tape. I did find myself yearning for him to be more aggressive. I think at the end of the day, that's the thing you ask for, but he's 17, he's young, right? Like he's still growing. I think he's still he's matured physically, but he's not fully grasped how to use it yet, or he's not fully aware of it yet. Right. Like it almost looked like he was, playing in a body that was much smaller than the one that he had sometimes, but he skates like a souped up Bryan Dumoulin, which is great. Like you got to be able to move at that size to get things done. And he's good at it.
Pre-ankle injury.
Yes. Okay. I'm comparing them at the same age.
All right.
But he's a good skater. So you got to start there, right? Long reach, obviously, just a pterodactyl out there. Great with his stick, good gap control. I would love to see him get physically engaged more. I think that'll come. He's young. He's raw, right? It exists, and you'll see it. I'm going to put a really long Peyton Kettles video out on the Substack probably next week. I'm finishing it up now, but you'll see him be physical in it. It's funny. The tape's fun because they put him in front of the net on the power play on PP1. He was getting PP1 minutes, but not as a defenseman, as a net front screening presence. But what's funny about that is like when rebounds would fall down, he scored a lot of goals with like these nifty hands where like he gets the loose puck, pulls it away from the goalie and like backhands it in. And you're like, oh man, like that's pretty nice. Is that applicable for the future? No, he will never use that skill again as a defenseman at 6'6" or playing a shutdown type role. But it was fun to watch this year, right? I think it's just, again, this one is a project to me. I think it's not because I'm concerned in any one area. It's just that I think there's a lack of engagement in the video, right? Not always in a bad way. He just looks like a meek 17-year-old that's like, again, becoming comfortable with his size, learning how to use it, adjusting to the speed of this new league, right? Like that was all on display last year. You could see him learning in the video, right? Like I watched it in reverse, his season in reverse. So it was like a Benjamin Button situation, but where he was getting worse and not better. But I think like I'm excited about him as a player because it's just, most of the time when you look at a player this size, what's the thing that always comes with him? He's not that great of a skater, right? Strike that. Not the case here. He can skate for days. And in transition, again, like he exhibited competency with the puck on his stick. The criticism is do it more, right? Like get more aggressive, take the game by the scruff of the neck, right? These are all things that'll come. But when you watch him with the puck on his stick in the neutral zone, you're like, oh, like he just dangled that guy. Where'd that come from? So when you have a guy with that size who's that comfortable with the puck, that's the key for me is how willing is he to do it? He's willing to do it. Like it wasn't his job last year. I don't think you were asking him to do it a lot. He played with a partner who was half his size and pretty mobile. So, that they'll take the heavy lifting most of the time. But he was out there. He was engaged. And I think that there's not anything right now I would describe him as bad at. I think he's just raw. Right. So, again, this one is one that I would put your patient hat on for. I don't have a lot of concern. I think you're looking at a guy who's like a number 5, a number 4, number 5 for you. That is probably like Owen Pickering. Like I think that Owen Pickering's comfortable with the puck, doesn't do it a lot, is better at gap control and being like a shutdown, clean it up guy at home. That's probably what Peyton Kettles is going to be. I think his upside's probably a little bit behind Pickering. He'll make more of a living off himself for just his size than he will anything else.
In terms of the value, how did you feel about? I don't know where you had Kettles
solid
on.
Yeah, I only rank 50 players. I don't go past 50. So I had Peyton Kettles at 47th. So I don't think this is at all out of the realm of where he should have been. And again, it's just like you put him there because of the potential, right? Like he's so young, and to be able to eat the minutes that he ate at this age and to be deployed in the ways he was deployed, you don't see that every day. So yeah, it's all signs pointing to positive stuff for the future for him.
I'm assuming that was probably the cut. Did they take any? I'm assuming they didn't take anybody else that was in those 50 prospects.
They didn't. No, no, there was no. Charlie Trethaway would have been close, and to be fair to him, it was less about that I dislike Charlie Trethaway, but I got to go back to what I told you earlier, Smitty, about how bad and sour and stinky that U.S. program was, and Charlie Trethaway was entrenched in that, right? And there was a lot of like, and you'll see this in the video. I'm Trethaway video is going to be a really long one. People who are disappointed they didn't get Kayshawn Aitchison should rest assured that they got Charlie Trethaway, who's like the junior version of what Aitchison does. And if you go and you really look at the video, he's doing a lot of stuff and no one is helping him. Right? Like it's like you could tell how frustrated he was in that situation last year. So yeah, I think he was borderline to it. But now that I've watched the whole of Quinn Beauchene's season, I would have flirted with the idea of him being in the like 60, 70, like knocking on that door. So for him to be at 148 is like bonkers. It's bonkers. And to me, I wrote a lot about him yesterday, but that's the gem of this class to me with regards to value. They got a player at 148 that a lot of people who are much smarter than I do thought that was like somewhere again in like that 60 area that he should have gone, and probably didn't because his team sucks and is awful. And he kind of got brutalized as a result and got hurt, got brutally run from behind, and missed 3 weeks of the neck injury. So that all kind of like cooled the jets on him a little bit. But Quinn Beauchene, I'm telling you now, I know a lot of people came away from camp messaging me on Twitter being like, dude, this guy's unreal, like blew me away. Get familiar with that name. And I think that's one that is more than likely to be somebody that makes some noise in this system sooner rather than later. Going back to Guelph, and they're going to suck again. They lost their best forward. He aged out. And then Jet Lachenko might make the Flyers. Like he could conceivably make the Flyers out of camp, and that would kill him. That would kill Beauchene completely. His next best forward would be under a point per game from last year. So hopefully he gets out of there. But that's the other one I tell you to keep an eye on, because the video just blown away by how good it was. And I was like peripherally aware of him because I watched a ton of like CHL and OHL specifically hockey last year. And they're like, you certainly knew the name, but like when you really get down to it and you start watching him, like, man, like he's pretty unbelievable two-way defenseman.
There we go. Yeah. Picked 148. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media the last couple of days about him. So I was going to bring up his name if you didn't. But yeah, just Tyler, do you have anything else you want to bring up draft wise?
Just
I
was going to say, is there anyone else? I know that there was 13 picks made by the Penguins. It's the most since like the 90s for the Penguins. And considering that there was 11 rounds of the draft back then, this is probably the most picks that they had in terms of like ratio to picks per amount of rounds. So like, is there anybody else that just you would say is notable that looking at the other remaining 9 picks that we haven't talked about?
I'm interested in Gabe Digg, the goalie they got, and take everything I just said about Guelph and apply it to his team. They sucked. They were terrible. He was fighting for his life out there. And I'm not a great evaluator of goalies. I never have been. I try not to do it at all because it's a position full of nuance that I don't understand, right? Like people go to school for this shit. You know what I mean? Like I do not. So, but what I will tell you again, and like talking to a lot of people I know who do this for a living, is his biggest criticism is he got overzealous, right? So I think of somebody who had the 1,000-yard stare, right? And was just getting shelled every night and was overcompensating for that and was probably overcommitting in situations or trying to make the 10 bell for his team. That was the big criticism of him, but he showcased a ton of athleticism. You can see it, even in the times where he's getting beat, he's getting close, right? And again, I got to stress, bad, like horrible, really horrible situation where he's just getting like sacrificed every night, right? They're letting him out to dry. So I think that, for me anyway, goalies on bad teams almost always have that criticism attached to them that they're doing too much or they're trying too hard or they look like they overcommit. Well, there's a reason for that, right? Like you try playing goal in that situation, see how you handle it, So I didn't think they'd take a goalie, right? Because they don't have the deepest pool of anyone in that, but they seem to have some solid prospects that are decently close there. But I think this one intrigues me, right? Because he's already kind of gone through his baptism by fire. It's happening now, right? It's hard to put him in a worse situation once he graduates from here. So keep an eye on him. And I think all reports at a camp were that like he looked pretty good and was pretty flashy in the drills.
There we go. Okay. Well, I thought it was I have not seen great reviews from the people that I've looked up after this pick, so we'll see. The only thing that I knew about him was Marc-Andre Fleury, same place. Literally the only thing that I knew about this guy. But all right, we're going to talk about some free agency, but we got another ad to play, so we'll be back in like 35 seconds. Smitty from Around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. So this is a free agency topic, but honestly, more so because of trades that have not been made yet, but we are expecting to be made. For the first time in a long time, we went into free agency not expecting that big splash to be made by the Penguins, understanding where they are in the process, and for the first time kind of being like open about it, like, hey, we're not trying to win, very clearly, regardless of what they say. The moves kind of show that. Honestly, the move, I guess, to talk about is Anthony Mantha, where I feel like they're kind of buying a draft pick at the deadline, should things go well. But anything else within free agency that they've done that's caught your attention? I definitely like bringing Philip Tomasino back for sure. But anything else that's caught your attention?
No, I think Anthony Mantha is the main one, right? Who, by the way, like analytically speaking, like posted really solid returns the last year he played and was healthy. We're talking like 80+ percentile offensively, which is like, who's going to say no to that? You know, you put that up top with Crosby or Malkin, and that's, they'll cook. You know, if he can. But again, there's a reason why he has performance bonuses around games played in his contract, right? Like, health is a concern here. Like, they obviously aren't too concerned about it because they signed him. But you nailed it, Smitty. Like, this is an Anthony Beauvillier situation all over again. Like, you hope that he goes out and overperforms. And then when the deadline comes and somebody needs a top 6 wing, you float him out there for a 2nd round pick, right? Or you fleece somebody even worse or something like that. So that's, to me, what I don't think he's a Penguin for much longer than March. And hopefully if he stays healthy, you know, they can get a good return for it and try to load up even more on the pick side. But, you know, high IQ player, like, he's the kind of player who I think is really good at being like the connective tissue of a line, where he makes a lot of good transitionary plays off the wall. He's good in puck support. People have this, like, I think this version of him as this like elusive, soft perimeter wing, but that's not the case at all. Like, he can get in there and mix it up on the forecheck. You know, transition numbers were all really good last year too. So I think he can fit in here. I think that there's a chance that if health stays with him, you know, he could put up points that would make a couple teams turn their heads and say, like, oh man, we could really use that right now.
When the first thing that I thought about when they signed him was exactly where he was going to slot in at. Now, there's 2 wingers currently on the Penguins that they're listening to trade offers on, and maybe there's a spot that's not open currently that is going to open up in the coming days. They kicked off the trade activity that we could potentially see trading Alex Nedeljkovic. But we haven't seen Erik Karlsson go yet. We haven't seen Bryan Rust go yet. We haven't seen Rickard Rakell go yet. I'm not asking necessarily for like a timeline here or anything like that, but do you believe, which of those players do you believe are going to be moved in your opinion? And what type of returns should we be looking at given, you know, their contract status, what's available on the market to other teams, all that stuff into consideration?
I think Bryan Rust is the least likely given his age and affinity for staying here. Plus also just the control he has over the situation, right? Like, I know Buffalo's name kept coming up a lot. I can't see Bryan Rust wanting to go to Buffalo. You know, I don't think that's a dream destination for him right now. So I think he's least likely. I think Karlsson's next in line for me as the number 2 option. But again, that's more of like his contract's not going to be easy for everybody, right? And the Penguins are obviously going to have to retain some level of salary in this deal. They're going to eat something here. The question is how much and what does that look like? But I think there's enough buzz out there that although people don't consider him to be as elite as he was when that trade was made, and that's elite offensively, I might add, there's still an immense amount of value there for a team that needs somebody of his skill set. And like Detroit's the logical one to me that keeps coming up. Like, you keep hearing their name, and I think like skill set wise, that would be something that they would think would probably help them get over the hump, which is their goal. And then I think Rakell is probably the most likely. You know, Josh was talking a lot, Yohi, last week about, you know, Rakell being really sort of like inextricably linked to Nick Ehlers, because Nick Ehlers was the last big wing piece left on the market, right? And I think the teams are sort of like calling on Rakell as a contingency plan should they not land Ehlers. So I think now that destination is sorted and that deal is signed, we kind of move into phase 2 of this process. And I think like, look, just historically, guys, like Dubas is an August dealer. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, you look back historically, like he does a lot of his work in the first week of August. And this may be another one of those situations where, you know, camp starts drawing closer and teams don't have answers to questions. I think Rakell is going to fetch probably you're not getting a first round pick for Rakell, but I could see him fetching a second, and maybe there's some spare parts that are interchanged between teams on top of that. I don't think Erik Karlsson is fetching you a first round pick either. Again, I think you're hoping for at best a second rounder, and for him, maybe you can bamboozle a prospect out. I think he and Rakell both, you can probably bamboozle a mid-tier prospect out. A guy like a Melvin Fernstrom, right? Like Melvin Fernstrom's shot is stupid. It's insane, but he can't skate. So you take the player because you're like, damn, if he figures that out, we got a hell of a prospect, So I think of players like that are really good in one area, but have a glaring weakness. They're not in the top 5 of another team's pool, but maybe they're 6 or 7. So I think that they're looking to accrue warm bodies, right? And they're taking as many lottery tickets as they can get. And I think both of those guys fit that bill. I think Rakell is the most likely. The winger market this offseason was terrible. And now that Ehlers is gone, there's still teams out there like the Washington Capitals who they really need help up there. And they are looking to add. So I wouldn't rule them out. I think there's some teams that the Western Conference is just a gross arms race right now. And I think that like a team like a Utah, for instance, they're interested in Erik Karlsson and having that name on their marquee. They're obviously interested in being better this year, right? Like that is very clear. So I wouldn't rule that out. I think any number of Western Conference teams are going to be in the mix too, because again, there's just a verifiable arms race out there. So I think there's no rush on this, but I would be shocked if Rakell shows up to training camp as a Penguin.
Mm-hmm. I'm not questioning what you believe is the return. Typically, I just wonder, the reason that I brought up the market itself is why, if there's just not another option out there for a 30+ goal winger, then what you typically view as fair value for Rakell isn't going, they're going to get more than that.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that comes into consideration.
Yeah. I think there's a good chance they put somebody in a full Nelson over this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's no rush here. And I also think that's why something maybe it may not just be one player coming out of Pittsburgh. They have a glut of defensemen on one side, right? That they could also potentially move here to sweeten the pot up. I don't know that, right? But they're at a point now where they've got excess that you might see them shave off a little bit to bring even more in, right? Mm-hmm. So a little out, a lot more back might be the strategy.
How much do you think the next year's draft? Now, obviously, if people are trading for these players, you would think that they're not going to be a position in next year's draft where it's going to matter. But how much is even the remote possibility that this is the Gavin McKenna draft? Are people going to be less hesitant or less, willing to part with their first round picks?
I don't think so. I think that's true, Tyler, for teams 1 in a lottery position and 2 on the verge of it. But I think those teams that are all in, they don't care because they're not going to win, right? That pick is useless to them. So, I think that's why the Rangers kept it. I don't think the Rangers kept it because they intend to use it at the draft. I think they're going to deal it to somebody to get more help and get better at the deadline. So, I think the teams that are really trying to win a cup today and know they're going to be picking 25th or beyond, they don't care about that pick at all.
I was going to try to find a different way to work this in, but Isaac Howard had his rights traded to Edmonton.
Oh, wow.
I'm curious to see, what Sam O'Reilly for Isaac Howard, 1-for-1, Tampa Bay and Edmonton, making a prospect for prospect trade. I appreciate that Elliot Friedman, who was at a Coldplay concert, said Coldplay concert interruption to post that.
Yeah.
But Tyler, you just brought up Gavin McKenna there. We couldn't get out of this podcast without bringing up he is committing to Penn State, where he will play next year. Penguins fans certainly going to be dialed in to what his collegiate season looks like, knowing that there's going to be a percentage chance that he becomes a Pittsburgh Penguin the following year. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Gavin McKenna in general. Where does he stack in terms of the Crosby, McDavid, Mackinsella, Breenys in terms of prospect tier?
Yeah, so Sidney Crosby's in a world of his own, right? That's about the time I started watching prospects, was the Crosby Ovechkin era. Those guys stand out like in a disgusting, gross way. Then you have Connor McDavid, right, who was the greatest skater probably of all time. And then you have Gavin McKenna. Like, to me, like, I think I put him above Bedard. To put this into context, right, like, he got an exception to play in the CHL at an extraordinarily young age, at 15, right? And at 15, he played in 56, 54 games, something like that, and put up 90-some points as a 15-year-old kid. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, 15 years old, I was like sneaking Rolling Rock out of the back of my friends.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So
yeah.
We were in very different timelines.
I was trying to sneak into Ken Drew's. No, I'm just kidding. Then he followed that up as a 16-year-old, right? And put up 123 points in 56 games or something like that. It's gross. It's gross what he can do with the puck.
So you feel like comfortably above the Bedards and Macklin Celebrini of the world.
Yeah. Celebrini was really good really fast when he hit the NHL. That might be tough for Gavin McKenna to do. It might be like a year or two runway before he hits that stride. I don't know, man. He's just a magician with the puck. He's disgusting. You know, everything you would talk about with McDavid's skating, talk about it with McKenna's brain, right? Like, he's just smarter than everyone else, and he can chain skills together in a way that is beyond what's normal for people. And Bedard couldn't do the things that I think McKenna could do at a younger age. And I'm talking like coming through, like, you know, there's a famous clip last year where he's going against one of the best defensemen in the draft, right? Literally one of the best defensemen in last year's draft, goes behind his back, spins. And then, so I don't know how to explain this to you. Behind his back, turns the defenseman, and then sort of like does a complete windmill around him, like with one arm, like sort of just fending him off like a child, and then lasers at top corner. And it's just like, what do you do? You know, like, what do you do? I don't know. No one in the CHL has figured out the answer to that question. No one. He just slaughtered people en route to like all the way through the Memorial Cup, where they lost because London is a super team. Like the London Knights are a super program right now in the OHL. They are the Nick Saban Alabama Crimson Tide. Like, everything they do is perfect. They have a pro level culture. That's who beat Gavin McKenna. And it took them. They were on, like, London was on. They took them behind the woodshed a little bit, but they were a better team. They should have done that. And McKenna still got his. Wasn't like, you know, they were walking him out of the building every night. And so he's going to go to college next year. I think is great for him. I think it's the Celebrini route, right? Like, same kind of idea as like, get me out of this environment. Junior hockey is just very gimmicky. It's just very gimmicky. You know, you think about, you think about like some of the college offenses that exist in football, right? And they're just zany college offenses that you would never see at a pro level. Junior hockey has a lot of that. This is zany stuff that they'll never see at pro, right? And they don't. And by the way, the coaches don't care about what's best for the player and in relation to their NHL team. They want to win games, right? So they're going to do things that are right for them. Whereas, like, I think you go to college, it's a much more pro style game. You see less of that gimmicky stuff. It's certainly more physical. So, and it's a slower, more methodical style game. I think Gavin McKenna is going to pick people apart at Penn State. Like, he's just going to eat people alive there. He can't hit him, right? Like, you can't be physical with him. He's too slick. He's too elusive. But, you know, it's worth a trip to Happy Valley next year. That's for sure. I don't like Penn State. Like, you know, I'm a Pitt guy, right? So, like, I'm not going up there because I love Penn State. I'm going there to watch Gavin McKenna. It's a great prize. But here's the thing, guys, that I would drive home to you. Even if the Penguins are the worst team in the league next year, there's a 70-some% chance they don't pick Gavin McKenna, right? Like, it's crazy. Like, it's still a really high chance that somebody else gets that pick. Like, there are so many good consolation prizes that did not exist this year, right? You had Schaefer 1A, Misa 1B, and then there was this huge plummeting drop, right? And then you had a couple guys like Martone, Hagens, Desnoyers, and then another plummeting drop. No, like, this time you have McKenna, who lives he's on Mars, right? Like, he's living in a space of his own. But then there's this tier of like 7 guys, legitimately 7 guys that you would put as the second tier of this draft, some of whom at the top end of that, like from 2 to 4, could change the they're not franchise players, but they're potential superstars. And you're going to take that every time. Ryan Rubrick is a name you're going to hear me talk about a lot in the next year. He's probably number 2, probably going to go second. And he's disgusting. He's filthy, big, strong, sees the game at another level. Not at a McKenna level, right? But as a player who, if you got him.
Everybody else that we've talked about, though, like where would he be in terms of a tier ranking along with like a Macklin Celebrini or Bedard, somebody like that?
Probably like slightly below that, right?
Okay.
Like not slightly, but like a tier below that. Like I think of like, you know, like Artemi Panarin's a great player, right? Like
Sure.
like not somebody you'd probably put in the top 5 of the NHL on most nights, maybe not even the top 10, but you get him and now you can build around that, right? Like that maybe he's not a cornerstone of your franchise, but you're like, damn, this is a nice piece. I've got something here. I can assemble a line based off the talents of this player. Like there's a lot of players like Ivar Stenberg in that range next year who you're like, these are consolation prizes, but they're pretty damn good consolation prizes. And any of those names would instantly be number 1 in the Penguins prospect pool, instantaneously be number 1.
Which goes with the last thing that I have, at least, and then we'll get you out of here, was, do you think based off how you project the group of players they got this year, how comfortable you feel about what they'll do this year, and then assuming a top whatever pick next year, do you think it's, I don't know if it's safe bet is the word to use here, but like how quickly could we be looking at this being a top 10 prospect pool in the NHL?
Probably next year, right? From a modeling perspective, there's a couple guys I always lean on that put this into an analytics perspective, right? Byron Bader is one of the best in the business. He's the one that designed the NHL model. He put the Penguins at 17 in his ranking that came out this week. If they went out and got a guy like, I'll use Stenberg as an example, who's probably like the 3rd or 4th best player next year. Big hulking Swede, who's kind of similar like Anton Frondel that we saw this year, but probably a little bit of a higher ceiling. That alone would move them like to 12, right? Like that's the kind of pick that like you're like anything top 5 next year is you're looking at a pretty sweet deal. And then when you just stack up the rest of again, that's a volume conversation. Like I love a strategy of carpet bombing because most of these guys aren't going to work out. That is the reality of the draft. Most of these guys will not play 100 NHL games, right? Like you have a 12% chance of getting to that point if you're drafted in the first 2 rounds. So buy as many tickets as you can. Let the wind separate the wheat from the chaff and go to it. Like let's just bring the names in here, and time and attrition will sort them out. And I think that's kind of the name of the game right now, because it's impossible to overstate how bad this prospect pool was when he took over. When Kyle Dubas took over, it was atrocious. Like bottom of the league. So to be all the way up to 17 now is huge. And again, to your point, if they came out, with again, like 11 picks next year, one of them being top 5 overall, they're certainly going to start busting their way in there.
I'm glad you brought up Kyle Dubas, because one of the last things I want to ask you about is how you assess the job that he's done over the last couple of years. It's been really 2 full years since he's taken over the job with the Penguins, and he kind of had that tightrope to balance of contending, or at least trying to contend for a couple of years, while also trying to rebuild the franchise and the prospect pool. Obviously, the contention part didn't work out, but how would you assess the job that he's done overall as the Penguins president of hockey ops, general manager, and in kind of both camps? Obviously the contending didn't work out, but the prospect pool as well.
I think he's done a really good job of restructuring the hockey operations department here, which, between the sudden departure of Jim Rutherford to, how things were sort of split and divvied up in the Hextall era, to where we are today. Like, I think that there's a discernible hierarchy in place now. And there's a lot of really good people in this organization, really good, smart people that are in this organization fulfilling a variety of roles. So I don't blame him for the decisions he made in his first year. He took his swing. The window was still open. And I think that, the Karlsson signing and trade, you could see the idea behind Graves, right? It obviously hasn't worked out. But you could see the idea behind it, right? The Jari contract's the one that you're like, oh, that's brutal, right? The length, especially. I know people always say, well, he's the only guy on the market. And I kind of reject those theories. I mean, there's other teams that went out and made trades to address their goaltender problem. So, like, you can't tell me that free agency is not the only route by which you can handle that situation, And even though Tristan Jarry was the only option, that doesn't mean you have to give him 6 years, right? Like that.
That's the bigger part of it,
right? Like, that's and if that's where his hard line is, let him go somewhere else, because the alternative, would it have been worse? Than what you actually got from Tristan Jarry, like, who, by the way, was in the AHL for the majority of last year. So you can't, I don't blame him for taking those swings, but I can criticize them for not working. Hindsight being 2020, obviously, like, it's easy to say that now. But I think everything since then has been good. I appreciate the fact that he's made a commitment to a direction. That's part of the problem, is that, like, they were sort of trying to keep, they were trying to restock the cupboard and be competitive at the same time. And you can't do that. Like, there's just no route to doing that in the NHL. So I think it's good that he's picked a lane. Right. And let's be honest, guys, here's the thing. It's not just Gavin McKenna, right? The year after Gavin McKenna, you've got a defenseman named Landon DuPont, who is absolutely gross. And just like Gavin McKenna played in the CHL last year with an exception and put up numbers from the blue line. So if you don't win the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, you pivot directly into the Landon DuPont sweepstake. And I know that, like, look, getting a generational talent, and I'm comfortable using these terms for both McKenna and DuPont because I think they're just disgusting players. Maybe not generational like Crosby and McDavid, but again, like, they're superstar talents. Like, I think they're going to be superstars in the NHL. And, like, DuPont, it's tough. Defensemen, they're not the same as forwards, but, like, dude, these kind of players don't grow on trees. So, like, he picked the perfect time to be bad. And I'll remind you both, this is my parting gift to you. Mario Lemieux gets picked. 21 years go by. Sidney Crosby gets picked. 21 years go by. Here comes Gavin McKenna. This is just the way it always works. This is the way the timing always seems to go well for the Penguins. And the good news is that this year, even if you don't get it, you get to come back the following year and try it again. Because I don't think this team's turnaround is going to be overnight. I think they're committed to where they are for now. And Landon DuPont would be as equally as tantalizing of an outcome as Gavin McKenna would, obviously for different reasons because he's a defenseman. But these are players that are going to be really good at the NHL level for a really long time.
Awesome. Well, Jesse, we appreciate the insight. Appreciate all the time. Kept you for a little over an hour, so apologize.
Yes, we take like 6 minutes to close out the show, so we can get Jesse out of here and then close out the show. We're good.
Yeah, but I also did want to give you the floor just to let the people know where you could find you. But also, you did mention that you're posting videos, and so I noticed we haven't mentioned it. The rebirth of Faceoff Factor, which we learned a few years ago, is the FOF in your Twitter handle. So. I just want to give you the floor to talk about that.
And then, for the longest time, I just thought that was your last name.
Yeah.
Marshfoff.
Yeah. I never wanted to change it because I feel like people got used to it. And then it was like, well, I'm not going back. But it's how I got started, was like that blog, right? It was way back in the day. And I have a lot more, it was a prospect based website at the core of it. And, I think now there hasn't really been a reason, the Penguins prospect pool has stunk and I haven't had a lot of things to say about it. But that's changed. I think now, like, I have more things to say than people. Like, I'd like to have a place to put it. I was putting all these videos on YouTube, but they were without context, right? Like, they just existed in the space, and there wasn't a lot of like explanation to them. So I'm gonna, really try to use this as a space to keep people updated on the prospect front and the draft as well. And the big stuff will still be at the Athletic and at McKean's. I'm still there. Nothing changed. I just needed another place to be able to put all of my prospect drivel. So Faceoff Factor is back as a Substack. I got the link in my Twitter It's been a really unbelievable first 2 weeks. The response has been a little bit more than I thought I probably was anticipating. But yeah, come on by and hang out with us and talk about prospects.
There we go.
Awesome
Good stuff. And lastly, other than there, Jesse, we kind of mentioned it all over the place, but just in general, where could the people find everything?
Yeah, so on the Twitter at jmarshfof, on the Athletic in the Pittsburgh section specifically, and really this year I think I'm going to be focusing on like what is Dan Muse doing and what are his systems. That'll be I think a lot of this focus on the Athletic, and then I cover the NHL in general for McKean. So at McKean's, you'll rarely find me talking about the Penguins. It's usually about other players in the league that I find interesting and doing more video analysis like that.
There we go. Good stuff. Good stuff. As always, Jesse Marshall, the best in the business. Jesse, we can't thank you enough taking some time. Well, I can't say sometime, way too much time out of your day to come and chat with us about everything that's going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But, we always appreciate the conversation. It's been a blast. So thanks so much.
Anytime, guys. Thank you. We'll see you.
There we go.
See you, Jesse.
Our guy, Jesse Marshall, joining the podcast. Lots of great stuff crammed into over an hour of conversation. This is one of our longer shows that we've had in a while. Although I feel like anytime Jesse comes on, he's like, you bring up something, it's like you're just winding up a toy.
He is
the
dream podcast guest. Let's be real. He's the dream guest where you just have to bring up a topic and he will go on a 10-minute tangent about that topic, if not longer. He is kind of the inverse of rookie Jared Jones in his podcast debut. That's a little throwback if you want to go watch that on YouTube on the Around the 412 YouTube. Jared Jones, after he got drafted in the second round by the Pirates, we had him on for about less than a quarter of the time that Jesse was on here.
Yeah, Jesse's got some tiers here as well for the content that you'll have to check out if you are going to go over to Face Off Factor. We could put the link down there as well for you guys to check that out if you're interested. Sure. But good stuff from Jesse as always. Appreciate everybody for watching or listening to this. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you were here on YouTube. Be sure there's a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Around the 412. You will find us there. Regardless of which one, be sure to go to the other one and do the same thing because it's totally free. Best way of helping us out. And in the description, regardless of where you're watching or listening, you'll find all the links to our sponsors that we've talked about already. Game Changers, you can save yourself $10 using code AT412. The app that cuts, you can download that from that link. Book an appointment with Keeks Barbershop, or you can do a walk-in, obviously, with Tony or Ashley day of, but be sure to check them out. Right above Tyler right now, we got Marcello Electric, our friend Brandon Marcello, AK Boots, his small business serving Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, and Butler counties. Does residential, commercial, and service calls. Hit him up, 724-614-0611. Again, that's Marcello Electric, 724-614-0611. But the link down below will take you to his Facebook page, see all of his pictures of stuff that he's been working on. His van, which by the way has no AC right now, I just found out last weekend, that's going to be brutal. We had a heat wave here, which is pretty crazy. He said he saw his van reach 120 degrees, so I can't imagine. But anyways, hopefully he's got that fixed by now. But good stuff there as well. And then in year 8, Rock Around the 412. Link to the GoFundMe down below as well. Every single penny donated goes directly to giving kids in the 724 and 412 areas the Christmas they deserve. We never had to worry about where it was coming from growing up. 177 kids have had Christmas given to them through this mission since 2018, and we're super excited to continue going on with that. This year, continuing to partner up with the East Rochester Salvation Army, such as we have the last 3 years in the name of our late friend Dalton Keene. So we're going to continue doing that as well. Donate at least $10. You'll be eligible to win some prizes. Definitely a Pat Fryermuth jersey. I feel like that's a given at this point. This is the Pens pod. Tyler's been giving away Pens tickets. We'll see where the team's at. Maybe that'll impact where you're sitting in the arena as well, depending on the performance of the team. But a bunch of other stuff as well. So appreciate you guys for donating. Over $500 donated already. Share the mission. Totally free to do that. You never know whose eyes and ears you can get on this thing. So once again, shout out to Jesse for coming on. It was a great conversation, a lot of fun. Always good to chop it up with him. But hit us up everywhere at Around the 412 on all the social media platforms. You find Tyler at Weiler_Teach33. You find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Tyler and myself, this has been another Around the 412 Pens pod. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.